Distinguished justices and special guests who are here on the podium, it's a great delight to be here. My first visit to India, and a very special thank you to Justice Sikri in particular, who did all that he could to make sure that I was here. I wish I'd been here earlier, but the great news is that I'm here now. This is, for me, a great opportunity to recognise and again applaud the leadership of Sumant. Sumant, I think, as everybody in the room is aware, is a former president of INSOL International, and I think what we see here today before us at the inaugural meeting of this conference and of this academy is a demonstration of Sumant's ongoing leadership across the global insolvency and restructuring profession, not just here in India. And I say across the profession globally because I look out into the audience and I can see familiar faces from across the globe, not just from locally. So to all that are here, and again in thanks and recognition of the distinguished guests and justices on the stage and all in the audience, thank you so very much for the opportunity to be here for a short while to talk about some issues from the perspective of INSOL International. I am the president of INSOL International, and one of the great honours and privileges we have as an association is to continue to engage with member associations, and of course Sumant's Academy foremost among them, and INSOL India, and we had a fantastic conference over the past 24 hours where we were able to engage with INSOL India and be hosted together and to talk about current issues in the market. The theme of this conference, and indeed tomorrow's forum, is very much about how to ensure that insolvency systems remain effective and efficient as we deal with some of the most extraordinary issues across the globe. We'll hear a lot about technological impact, we'll hear about digital change, and of course interactions that occur within a global economy that, according to all reports, is under increasing amounts of stress. So how will we navigate 2023? I'm not so sure. I don't have all of the answers, but I can tell you certainly that based upon current predictions, the restructuring and insolvency systems that we work within and that we come together to promote and to talk about enhancing and bolstering are going to be at the forefront, not just for us, but I think among economies, legislators, governments, judges and practitioners globally. So may I talk about three issues today which I think sit at the heart of this discussion, and I'm so grateful that Justice Sikri has already rehearsed one of them, and so I will talk about that in a moment. But first I'd like to touch upon out-of-court workouts very briefly. Out-of-court workouts, and this is one theme that we talk about across the globe and often with the World Bank as well, are a critical part of a best practice restructuring system. One of the reasons why I think is self-apparent. They provide speed, flexibility and cost savings in the work that we do and in the system that we operate are critical. We avoid expensive, sometimes time-consuming delay to try to maximise the return for creditors. On an institutional level, one of the great benefits of out-of-court workouts is that they can take the pressure off the court system. And we appreciate and respect the incredible work undertaken by the judiciary across the globe. But in the end, resources are limited, and sometimes speed is the critical ingredient in a successful restructure. So the more that we can do to enhance and achieve effective out-of-court workouts, the better is the overall operation of the system. May I promote very briefly one such framework for out-of-court workouts, and that is INSOL International's own International Statement of Principles for a Global Approach to Multi-Creditor Workouts. Why have a short name if you can have a long name? But it's a brilliant instrument. It's been adopted broadly. It's been restated in many jurisdictions. It's been endorsed by the World Bank, the IMF and the Financial Stability Board and other international bodies. Locally, the Reserve Bank of India has also developed its own principles based on out-of-court workout frameworks, indeed I think in part drawing on the INSOL principles. And in recent years it's also included the prudential framework for the resolution of stressed assets and the framework for the revival and rehabilitation of MSMEs, and I'll come to MSMEs in a moment. So I think this clear guidance from the RBI is a continued reinforcement of the critical importance of out-of-court workouts. The other thing to mention very briefly, and this caught my attention as I was preparing my remarks, is India's new pre-packaged insolvency resolution process. I don't have too much data on its operation at the moment, but I understand that it's directed towards small businesses in particular. Now, anything that's directed towards small businesses or micro and small to medium-sized enterprises is a critical addition and a very welcome addition to any insolvency system. And the metrics for me are quite striking. So in India, according to my research, there are over 63 small businesses, and they contribute a third of India's GDP and employ over 110 million people. So anything that we can develop and design and implement and support that is directed toward micro and small to medium-sized enterprises will have a more fundamental impact on the health of the economy than some of our insolvency systems and processes that are directed toward larger enterprises, because indeed it's usually smaller businesses that are the lifeblood of the economy and smaller businesses that sometimes need our help. So out-of-court workouts is the first issue. The second I'd like to touch on, and as I said, Justice Sikri has already really done the hard work for me here. He's talked about the critical importance and the central significance of mediation in the insolvency and restructuring system. And Paul Heath, Justice Paul Heath is here today, and he will talk subsequently during the course of the proceedings about mediation, and he's leading very significant work for INSOL International as we continue to advance our discussion about the importance of alternative dispute resolution in all of its forms across the globe. So we've been working very closely with the World Bank and INSOL, and we've made mediation one of our key priorities. And not mediation just in the resolution of commercial disputes in the way that you would normally expect it, but using mediation in a creative way, almost not in substitution of, but in facilitation of the work that's undertaken by financial advisors, by lawyers, by accountants, in the development of a restructuring plan and the implementation of the restructuring plan. So not just at the end of the process, but thinking about ways that we can bring mediation into and at the start and at the very outset of the development of financial distress. We know, and we've heard many discussions, that in the United States, in Singapore, in the UK, we've heard from Justice Sikri, who has international experience, mediation is well understood, but it's not understood universally. And so the more that we can do to talk about the role of mediation and the opportunity in the insolvency and restructuring system, again, the more it can contribute to facilitate and sit as an adjunct to formal insolvency processes. The third topic I'd like to talk about very briefly is cross-border insolvency and restructuring, and it was indeed this discipline that attracted my attention in 2008 when I undertook the INSOL Fellows Program, known as the Global Insolvency Practice Course, and transformed my professional focus into international insolvency and restructuring work in particular, which sees me here today. But there's a very interesting development going on economically globally now, and that is, of course, the rapid digitisation of the world economy. And while there have been geopolitical tensions and geostrategic issues and much discussion about the retreat from globalisation, I don't for a minute think that we will ever see a situation where the global economy is not interconnected in the way that business operates. It's just simply impossible to unscramble the egg, so to speak. And so what that means is that cross-border insolvency and restructuring systems will always play a critical part in the work that we do, in the work that you do locally. And I'm often asked by practitioners, I practice locally, why is this relevant? And I think the simple response is there is not a single part of the economy that isn't somehow in the supply chain or in the delivery of a product or in the financing of a process that isn't somehow connected with another jurisdiction or another market. So as much as we may think we're only local, we're all truly global. And so for India, I'm very excited about the discussion in relation to the adoption of Part Z or Z of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. And I'm also delighted to hear that you're giving consideration to the multi-corporate entity group model law as well. Now, no country has yet adopted that model law, so I think it is fantastic news to hear that India is spending time considering how you can adopt the multi-creditor group insolvency law model law, as well as the original model law, which recently celebrated its 25th anniversary, and there were indeed proceedings to do that in Vienna. So if there's anything that INSOL can do to support or encourage or be involved in the work, the very important work that is being undertaken in India in relation to the adoption of the model laws, we would love to help. So may I just make a few final remarks and then I'll hand back to Samant. We very successfully hosted the Future Leaders Forum last Thursday. It was outstanding. Nilang is here. I'd like to thank, I think Nilang might be here. I'd like to thank Nilang again for the extraordinary contribution, and for those that participated in that program and the other programs that are occurring around the world. Thank you very much for engaging in it. We've established what I think will be of great interest to many, INSOL Tech, which is focused on the intersection of digital and technological issues in the Insolvency and Restructuring Forum, and recently had the launch of that in Singapore. We've established a very important new special interest group focused on asset tracing and recovery, and for those with an interest in that area, I encourage you to get in touch. And finally, may I make a plug? And my plug is for INSOL Tokyo in September this year. Between the 11th and the 13th of September, INSOL will host its annual conference in Tokyo on the back of our incredibly successful conference in London last year, where we had over 920 delegates, including many who are here in this room. So it is an opportunity to mark your diary, and I look forward to seeing you all in Tokyo. And again, congratulations, Samant.